Hello, everybody. My name is Pastor Gordon, and the name of this program is Fit, Positive, Confident. This is a brand new program. We are going to be spending our time talking a little bit about health, physical health, spiritual health, and also the healthy attitude that we all should have in order to live our lives to the fullest. We are just starting this program not only on TV but also on the radio. And I want to tell you just a little bit about it. For those of you who are in Denver, you can hear this program on AM 670. The name of the station is KLTT, and this is at 5:30 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday, is when this program is going to be on. So we are adding a radio program to our television broadcast, and we will continue with this television broadcast on a regular basis here on Sunday evenings. And I just want to thank you for watching. If you would like to find out just a little bit more about Fit, Positive, Confident, I would like to invite you to go to our website, which is www.fitpositiveconfident.tv, and it's all one word. And there you will find out more about our TV broadcast, about our radio broadcast. And I want to tell you about the radio broadcast. The great thing is that even if you are not in Denver, you can listen to us Monday through Friday at 5:30 if you go to that station's website, KLTT. And you can also hear all of the broadcasts on our website, which is fitpositiveconfident.tv, and that information is on the screen right now. Today I have in my hands a book, Creation, Health, Discovery, and this book we are giving out for free to anybody who calls the number on the screen. And this is a courtesy of the group of hospitals from South Denver. And these hospitals are Porter Seventh-day Adventist, Littleton Seventh-day Adventist Hospital, Parker Seventh-day Adventist Hospital, and there is a brand new hospital in Colorado, Adventist Hospital in Colorado, and that's in Castle Rock. So these four hospitals, they are providing the funds for us to give this book to you free of charge. I want to take a moment and tell you a little bit about this book. This book has sold already over 1 million copies. And this is one of the most practical books that you can read on health. The book is about the principles that we can find in the story of creation, the principles of health. When God created Adam and Eve, He put them into this wonderful place. In this wonderful place, the Bible calls the Garden of Eden. And when you think about that place where God had placed Adam and Eve, you realize that this was a place of peace and quiet, that this was a place where food was clean and organic, not genetically modified, not sprayed with all kinds of chemicals. So you can pick out and take out a lot of principles about health from the story of creation. So this is exactly what this book does. It was written by two doctors, Des Cummings Jr. and Monica Reed. And I tell you, I started reading this, and it's a great book. And you can not just read it and put it away, but you can read it and apply it, and then go back and read it again, another chapter, and apply that in your life. And you can just go over and over on this book. I think it is going to be a great resource in your library, especially if you want to learn more about improving your health. So please, call the number on the screen. You can see it, 303-278-5082, and we will give that book to you absolutely free of charge. When you call that number on the screen, I also want to tell you that one other thing that we will offer to you is somebody to pray with you. I answer the phone calls when they come in, and so does my assistant Milos, and you have seen him here on this program. He has preached here in the past. So the people that answer the phone calls that are coming in are pastors, and they are people that have been trained to pray with people and to care for your needs. So if you have an issue in your life that you need prayer for, if you need somebody to just come alongside you and help you out and hear what's going on in your life, and you want to share, you can feel confident when you call that number that you will be in good hands. I also want to tell you one other thing. when you call that number, you don't have to worry about somebody asking you for money. You don't have to worry about somebody asking you for a donation. That's not what we are about. We are simply about connecting people with Jesus and teaching the principles that can improve your life. The most important thing in life, folks, I want to tell you, and I say this a lot, the most important thing in life is to know Jesus on a personal basis, because He is the one that has the answer for all of our problems. Today I want to talk a little bit about making hard decisions. How do you like making a hard decision in your life? When was the last time that you did make a hard decision? Is it easy for you to make hard decisions? I would like to say that it's not easy for people to make hard decisions, because hard decisions can be painful at times. Hard decisions can cause you to sweat. They can cause you to worry. They can cause you sleepless nights. When you realize that possibly your marriage is about to end and you have to make a choice, that can cause you a lot of sleepless nights. When you realize that your company is downsizing and there is a potential that you will find a pink slip in your mailbox when you go to work on Monday, you have to make some hard decisions. When you realize that you're in a relationship that's not good and you have to get out, or maybe you are in a situation where you want to enter into a relationship with somebody. Those are hard decisions. And sometimes people will avoid making hard decisions because hard decisions are painful. I want to ask you a question. What was the hardest decision that you ever had to make in your life? As a pastor, I have seen a lot of people having to make some really tough decisions. In my 25 years of pastoring, I have come across people who had to make a decision about the fate of their loved one. Years ago, I had a family come to me and ask me to come and visit their mother, who was taken to a hospital because of a stroke. And the doctors have done all kinds of things in order to try and help her out, and now they couldn't do anything, so the pastor came in, myself, and we sat down around that bed and we prayed for this woman. And you know what? Sometimes you pray and you see the healing, you see the miracle, but at other times you pray and God decides that there isn't going to be a healing, there isn't going to be a miracle. So a few days went by. This older woman was not getting any better, and at one point the doctors came to the family and they said, look, you need to make a decision. What are you going to do with your mom? The only way that she is going to remain alive is if she's hooked up to all of these machines. And the doctors basically told the family that the person was brain dead. There was no more brain waves. And they told the family that it was basically all over. The only way she was going to stay alive is if she was hooked up to the machines that were feeding her, the machines that were making her heart beat for her, the machines that were basically doing all kinds of things for her. And you know, at that moment, I could see right away that there was a tension in the room, because she has had a lot of kids, and they all had a different opinion on what should happen to their mother. And the ending result was that they could not agree. They could not agree on a decision to basically pull the plug. And they just decided to give it a little more time, and they went on for another week, and then they went on for a month. And I tell you, this is one of the saddest stories that I remember in my pastoring career. This woman was on machines for a whole year. She developed sores, bed sores, and her quality of life was non-existent. Her brain was not working. But the family just could not get themselves to make a hard decision about ending her life. And finally, you know, the doctors came in and they said to them, guys, what are you doing here? I mean, this is just not working out. She's never again going to recover. And finally, a year later, the family agreed to end it all. And within half an hour of disconnecting the machines, the poor woman finally passed away and was no longer there. It is hard to make a hard decision. Now, what I just shared with you is an extreme example of making a hard decision. We don't have every day to make these extreme type of decisions, but every day we do have to make decisions. And every once in a while we have to make important decisions in our life. You know, some years ago I had to make a decision whether or not to start a television program. And when you start thinking about making that decisions, there is all kinds of challenges. Will your church buy the idea? Will you be able to come up with the money? Will you be able to get the funding that you need? Will you have the time and the team, people who are helping you to put all of this together? Because there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes when you're putting together a TV program or radio program or whatever. So when you start thinking about all of the challenges that come along when you're about to make a decision, it becomes very easy, and I'm going to use the word here that I don't use a lot, but it's easy to kind of slink away from making that decision. And the reason I use that word to slink away is because of what it means. It means to kind of bury yourself, bury your head in the sand, and not want to deal with this tough decision because it is painful. This word, to slink away, also means to cover. In other words, as a little kid, you know, when there is a thunderstorm, what do little kids do when they are in bed? They take a blanket and they cover it over their head because they're scared. They don't want to hear all of that thundering and noise. And that's what that word means, to slink away. It means to stash yourself away. In other words, to put yourself in a safe place somewhere where you will not have to make a decision. And many people out there are living this kind of a life. They are not willing to make hard decisions, and because they are not willing to make hard decisions in their life, they're constantly dealing with an ongoing problems, and it's just not getting, they're not getting rid of it. It's not getting solved. So today we are talking a little bit about how do you get yourself out of that mode and do make a hard decision. It is easier to remain inert than to make a hard decision to achieve something. It is easier to remain inert. It is easier to just remain sitting in a nice fat chair and watching TV than to make a decision to get out there and go for a 5-mile jog. It is easier to stay at home and eat a large piece of cake than to make a decision to go out there into the health club and work out for 2 hours. It is easier to ignore a problem many times than to deal with it. How many folks out there have an issue with their kids, and instead of dealing with it, they're just ignoring the problem? How many people have an issue in their marriage, and instead of dealing with it, they're just ignoring the problem? You know, and why? Because human nature doesn't want to deal with conflict. So it is hard to make these tough decisions. There is a story in the Bible that I feel is very applicable to this particular situation. In Jonah chapter 1, verses 1 to 3, I want to read this story to you, even though I believe that you already are familiar with this story. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. In other words, God is calling his prophet Jonah, and he's saying to him, look, I want you to go to the city of Nineveh, and I want you to preach against it. Now, if you know a little bit about the history, and if you know a little bit about the Bible, you will find out that Nineveh, it was a famous, powerful city, kingdom city, and they were merciless to their enemies, and they were also to the point where God couldn't stand what they were doing, so God wanted to destroy them. But he also wanted to give them one more chance. So he says to Jonah, his prophet, he says, get up, go to the city of Nineveh, and preach against them. Now, that means that Jonah is going to have to go in there into the city streets, and he's going to have to tell them all about their sins and all about the things that they are doing wrong. And he's going to have to tell them that God is going to punish them. Now, what happens when you confront somebody and you tell them, hey, what you're doing is wrong? What happens when you do that? Generally, there is a pushback, right? Generally, there is a fight. Generally, that person that you are confronting, they're going to tell you, hey, why don't you mind your own business? Why don't you go figure out what's wrong with you instead of telling me what's wrong with me? So Jonah, now God is telling him, go preach against them, but he's feeling that this is going to cause all kinds of conflicts and problems in his life. So verse 3 tells us, Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port. Jonah slinked back from making the hard decision. He shied away from making the hard decision. Why? Because he realized journey is going to be long. The risk to his life is going to be great, because once he got there, he knew that those people are not going to take too kindly to him telling them all of the bad things that they are doing. And he also knew something else. He knew that his mission, at least he felt in his mind, was that his mission was going to be useless, because he's going to go over there and tell them that God is going to punish them. And then he knew that God is merciful, and if they repent, God is also going to repent from doing any harm to them. So Jonah, instead of making the hard decision to obey God and to do what God told him to do, he runs away. He didn't feel like he should be wasting his time on preaching to these people, because God is going to be merciful to them anyways. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. He ran away from the Lord. He did not want to make a hard decision, because it was just easier to find the justification for his fear, for his laziness, for his worldview, for his beliefs. And sometimes it is easy for us to come up with all kinds of excuses than to make a hard decision. Sometimes it is easier to say, you know what, I can't do this because everybody says that this cannot be done. I cannot do it. And you know, we just find all of these excuses for not doing something that is hard in our life. And all we are doing is we are finding justification to get away from making the hard decision. And as a result, we continue to live with a problem. Now, you remember the rest of this story. God was not pleased with what Jonah did, so he sent the storm, and the ship was going to sink. And finally, Jonah told the sailors, he said to them, stop praying. You are praying useless. Your prayers are useless to your gods. The reason we are in this mess is because I disobeyed God. So Jonah told them, he says, look, just take me and throw me overboard, and the storm is going to quiet. And after a long and agonizing argument, they finally did that. They threw him overboard. What happens? He hits the water. Not too long after that, he's swallowed by a fish. And that's why you remember that story of Jonah in the fish's belly. And Jonah finds himself in a trouble that he just shouldn't have been in. If he had done what God had told him, if he had made the hard decision in the first place to obey and to go forward, he would have never been in the belly of that fish for 3 days and for 3 nights. And you remember the rest of the story. He prayed to God and begged, and finally God had the fish spit him out. And in the end, he had to go back to Nineveh and do what God told him to do in the first place. And he preached to them so effectively that they all repented. And all of the excuses and arguments that he had made originally for not going to Nineveh, turns out he was right, because God repented. When God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring on them the destruction that he had threatened. But to Jonah, this seemed very wrong, and he became angry, and he prayed to the Lord, isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? That is what I tried to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish. Jonah is still not happy with the fact that he had to make a hard decision and obey God. How stubborn human beings are. We don't want to make a hard decision because it's just too painful. It just doesn't go along with our worldview. He knew that God was going to be merciful to these people. He knew that if they repented, God was going to forgive them. So that was his excuse for avoiding making the decision to go to the city of Nineveh. You know, maybe today you have a situation in your life that is very hard on you. Maybe you have to make a very difficult decision in your life and you're shying away from that. You don't want to make it. You don't want to make it because it is going to be painful, because it is going to hurt somebody, because it is going to inconvenience you, because it is going to make you get off of your butt and have to do something hard. And you just say, okay, I'm not going to make the decision right now. I'm just going to wait. Now, when you do that, you need to realize you can find that you are going to end up being in a much greater problem than if you got out and took care of that problem immediately. You know, I think it was last winter, I had a problem with one of my cars, a flat tire, you know, and I thought, you know, I'm not going to change it. I'll just do it tomorrow. Now, what happens in Colorado in the winter time? Tomorrow morning you get up and you got 3 feet of snow. When you have to make a decision to do something and you decide not to do it because it's too hard, I don't want to make the decision, the chances are that tomorrow you could find yourself in a much greater problem than if you'd taken care of it right away when it arose, when it came up. So this is what happened to Jonah. He didn't want to go to Nineveh. He finds himself in a belly of a fish. Where do you find yourself today as you are listening to these words? Are you in a situation where you can if you made a hard decision, you could solve a lot of your own problems? Or has it already degraded? Has it already gone so far that you are finding yourself in a belly of that fish? And your problem is so great that now even if you wanted to make a hard decision, you couldn't. Now, you know, you got to realize when Jonah was inside of that fish, he could have made any decision he wanted to. There was nothing he could do about his situation. There was no more options. He couldn't tell that fish to take him on the shore. He had no options. He had no choices. He had no decision to make. You know, sometimes God gives you the ability to make a decision, and it may be a hard decision, but if you're not willing to make it, then God may just put you in a situation where you won't have a choice. If you're not willing to take that gift that God is giving you, the gift of choice, the gift of free will, the gift of decision making, if you're not willing to use it, then God might just take that away from you. Take away from you the ability to make a decision, just like he did from Jonah. Jonah finds himself in the belly of that fish. There is nothing he can do. And even when the whole thing was over, he's still complaining. He says, I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. Now, Lord, take away my life, for it is better for me to die than to live. Jonah is just stubborn and a little bit stupid because he's not doing, sometimes all you got to do is just shut up, don't think, and do what God is telling you to do. Don't rationalize, don't analyze, don't think, just do. God was asking him to do, and he came up with all kinds of bunch of excuses why not to do. Does that resonate? Does that sound familiar in your life? What is the hardest decision that you have to make right now? At the beginning of the program, I asked you what was the hardest decision that you ever made. Now I'm asking you what is the hardest decision that you are facing right now. Time to move to a new job, maybe time to move to a new city. Maybe it's time to end a relationship. Maybe it's time to begin a relationship. Maybe it's time to kick your kids out of the house because they've been there for too long and they are beginning to be abusive to you and they're just not doing their part. And you are just ignoring that problem and thinking, oh, maybe if I'm nice to them, one of these days they're going to get better. Well, maybe it's time you kick them out. Maybe it's time you make a hard decision and make your life easier for them, for yourself, and not enable them to do the crazy things that they are doing in the first place. So what is the hardest decision that you have to make right now? Maybe you have to make a hard decision on your money, on your spending habits. Maybe you have to make a hard decision to be faithful to God today. And you've been putting that away because you just didn't feel like if you did, that it was going to be a good thing in your life because it was going to impose on you too much. Well, maybe it is time for you to make a commitment to God. Maybe it is time for you to say, Lord, I need you in my life. I need your help. Help me to make these hard decisions in my life. Give me the strength. Give me the ability to make them so that my life will be easier. Let me say this. If you decide to make the hard decisions that you are facing right now in your life, I guarantee you God is going to be with you. Do not slink back. Do not shy away from a hard decision. Do not be scared to make a hard decision. When I was a boy, 8 or 9 years old, you know, the way everybody knew that you knew how to swim was if you were on the ocean in this particular spot back home, and if you swam across this channel that was about the length of a football field. And one day we were there, and I got into the water, and I started swimming, and I looked over my shoulder, and my dad was back on the shore, and he was just looking at me. He never said, go for it. He never said, don't do that. He was just looking at me to see what I was going to do. And I decided to make a decision that day to show everybody that I knew how to swim. And as an 8 or 9-year-old boy, I swam the length of that channel. Made a hard decision to go in deep, to go into the deep water. And when you make that decision, the results are great because you feel good about yourself after making such a decision. Folks, I hope that this type of a program is a blessing to you. Again, I want to mention to you, please call the number on the screen where we'll send the book to you, and please check out the website that's on the screen, and hope to see you again right here next Sunday at the same time. God bless you.